Darcy, is the audio still garbled?
Is the audience or is audio garbled? No echo?
Oh, no, it's you. It's on the chat or on the
Okay.
Q&A.
Okay.
No, it's on the chat.
All right. Sorry for the delay. Got a little bit backed up with business. We did have a finance committee meeting to approve policy recommendations for the new investments that we're about to do, and talked with the agent. That was a meeting with Carolyn Fundingsland and Deborah Gardner and the investment manager, getting ready for that next step. And that pushed everything back. So we are about 8 minutes late for this meeting, but the agenda is very doable today, I think. Good afternoon, Gina.
Good afternoon, Gina James, Health and Human Services. Our primary discussion today is to revisit RFP discussion we started a few weeks back. After we wrap that up, I do have a couple short miscellaneous items to follow up on. But we had met a couple weeks back to talk about requests for proposals. We kind of discussed a couple priorities that we would want included. So we've drafted the RFP. I sent a draft out to the board, I think on Monday, with both a red line version and a clean copy to review. It's broad, as we discussed, so it doesn't get into specifics of a project. I'll highlight a couple of things that were included that we had discussed previously. It does specify proposals, entertaining proposals for one-time or startup costs for a project. So that is included in here. It also states there's a particular interest in proposals that address youth homelessness or housing. So that is within here. Of course, it references the 5-year plan and document recording fees. Was the other component that we had discussed that was included. There was some discussion about community impact and having the proposal address that. So we included some language in the technical proposal section that asks for the proposers to include a description of both the positive and negative impacts to the community, both in the immediate or surrounding area of the project and to the community as a whole. And also to describe ways that they would potentially, that they could mitigate potential negative impacts. So we added that in as well. Beyond that, most of it is the standard boilerplate RFP language that's in here. I'm happy to make other adjustments or whatnot, depending on feedback.
No, I reading through it, I appreciated those things being added. I noticed that. So I thought that looked good, and I appreciate that. The question I had, and it's really nothing that changes this thing, it's more global. We've had discussion, there was discussion yesterday on it's not easy for the private sector to participate in these type of things. And so I looked through and see what may exclude those. And I don't know, that section 1.3, does that automatically just, it seems to me that pretty much just excludes any private sector. And I don't know, I'm not suggesting we change anything for this one, but just going down the road, trying to look at ways to, because we have had interest from a couple people in the private sector of doing something. They just think it's kind of onerous. So I don't know how to make that a little easier.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, so the minimum qualifications is the section you were looking at.
Yeah.
So it does include license to do business in the state of Washington. I think that could include like a private business, if they're licensed to do a business in the state of Washington. It doesn't specify, that it has to be a nonprofit or anything like that. I think it would be great to see a proposal that has maybe a nonprofit takes the lead with the application, because they may have the skill set to do that. but to partner with those private
So
entities.
they work in partnership or something?
Yeah,
So
I think some would be okay with that.
sure. Yesterday, we had two different formats for making new housing more affordable. One was, it goes by various different names. Originally, they used to call it the urban homestead, the sweat equity, self-help housing. Those are all different names that have been used. Where community development block grants are allowed, but it's like the recipient is the one who does the building. And that's kind of the same thing with Ron Kozlowski. He got a CBDG grant. But it was he and his wife who did all the work, which is why it was, he could do it for he could remodel an apartment for $7,000 a piece. I have a feeling that's the key, because that prevailing wage law kicks in if you contract with people.
Yeah.
And, that's what just raises the price. I don't know if we wanted, and I don't know what the language was that Longview used on those, or what the self-help housing uses to avoid that, because it's, the owners are doing the work and they collaborate with the rest of the folks in the same neighborhood, all doing the same thing. So there may be some little language that fits. But having thought about that language, it raised the question, now that our partnership with Longview is ended, can we use those document recording fees inside the city of Longview? Because we were under a partnership, which allowed us to go, anywhere in the county that we were partners with. So now that's all kind of changed.
well, and I think that's a sort of a policy decision of the board. I don't,
Okay,
I
I didn't
think
know if there
so.
was a built-in restriction or not.
the RCW doesn't draw any of those lines in terms of, if
So that's a federal guideline for the CDBG.
for
that
CDBG.
we can't
yes.
use our CDBG inside
Correct.
the
Yes.
city of Longview.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. They call it, I hate the term, but they call it, what do they call it? Entitlement areas.
Yeah.
Yep. And so
City of
City of
Longview is
Longview is an entitlement.
it's big enough to get their own CDBGs.
Yeah. Yeah. So those lines are drawn outside of our control for those particular funds, but for document recording fees, the RCWs don't draw those lines.
So as I was going through kind of studying this, that raised us another question with the funds that we now have left over. We've got quite an ending fund balance.
Mhm.
We've started cutting away. But now that Longview's into the partnership, does whatever share that was not used, that they contributed to what's in our balance, shouldn't that also go back? We know the future future fees would go to them, but
Yeah.
we haven't spent some of that money.
No.
I don't think it's very much because we have two big projects that are going into the city of Longview, but
Right. So I think what we have is what we have currently. What's going to Longview only affects the future revenue moving forward. So it was, the resolution was effective this month. And so this quarter of this year will be the first amount that they're entitled to receive. So what we had at the end of the year is what we have and we keep.
so the phrase in the state law that says if the counties don't use the city's money in a timely manner, it can be pulled away. That doesn't include, because I saw that phraseology in the state law, and it just raised a question in my mind, but are we going to owe them back fees?
Yeah, I don't.
We did have, was it Donna? In explaining that, and it pretty much was from the date that they got the agreement that we go forward, is how she interpreted it.
Oh, right.
Who explained it?
Deborah Gardner came up when we were here a couple weeks ago. I think you were gone. She came up and explained the breakdown of the funding, the doc recording fee portion that will now be going to the city of Longview, effective this month going forward. So they'll get first quarter, at the end of the first quarter of this year, they'll receive their first amount. And it should, when we've talked a lot before about what we anticipate collecting in revenue for document recording fees. This past year, we received about $1 million. And so next year will be less. because of Longview's portion, so maybe closer to 700,000, depending on, of
Yeah.
course, what the housing stuff does, but.
Okay, okay. Thanks. No, I appreciate it. And I agree. I appreciate the adjustments that were made to the requirements. I think that should go forward unless there's some way to tweak the language to encourage the recipients being the one doing the construction. If
How do we work
like-
around
like
that?
the Sweat equity.
Mhm.
concept.
I
there's a way of doing
think
that.
you're missing a pretty easy solution is just take the last two requirements off. They really don't accrue to a value that we're going to assess from the RFP.
Are you talking about the minimum qualifications?
Right. Right. And as to the other thing, I am pretty allergic to ex post facto laws, and that's what we'd be dealing with here.
Except it deals with money and that sometimes makes a difference.
Well-
If there's, and the only reason I even brought it up because there is that phrase in the state law that allows money that's not used timely to be taken back. So
Yeah,
we'll have to do a little more research on that. I wouldn't want to get surprised if we allocate it when we're not supposed to, if they make a claim. They may never make a claim. I don't know.
So I recommend we take out the experience with affordable housing and or homeless programs and experience
Yeah.
with engaging individuals experiencing homeless or housing instability into services. We have a huge organization to actually produce the housing is what I'm thinking I'm focused in. The operations and who gets
Mhm.
in there and all that is we've already got a lot of people who do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's up to the board. We can take those two bullets off.
Yeah, if we can do that.
Yeah.
You might open up the arena just a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that'd open it a lot for someone like Kozlowski to say, yeah, I'll build this and maybe he'll act as a GC and then turn it over. We don't really know that part, but
Yeah,
we're not trying to develop another
Housing
another
authority.
housing authority. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I would discourage that. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Far as I go, when I look through the document, that was the only real question I had on it. I thought you incorporated everything else we'd asked for.
Okay. The other piece I'll point out, we don't specify any type of funding limitation in here. So we could see proposals for $1,000. We could see proposals for 10,000, $1 million. So we could put a cap on it. We have done that in the past where we say, proposals in excess of $2 million will not be considered.
Well, my hunch is community house will probably ask for everything that we've got available. The community house will probably want whatever's available if we don't put a cap on it. But we don't have that much money left anymore, right?
We have about 2.7 million. That is sort of at the end of last year is what we had in the bank when we take out what we have allocated.
The two,
Yeah,
take out what we did yesterday.
Yeah. I fully expect they'll ask for at least the purchase of the building.
Which then poses a question of whether that gets to building more affordable housing if all they're doing is building apartments for kids. And that'll be what we have to decide on our criteria.
Yeah, exactly. The nice thing I like about something a little vague is we can't think of everything.
Yeah.
And
mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
So next steps would be.
but in terms of the limits, I'm wondering if you're going to get hammered with $100,000 proposals, which would really be unmanageable, I think.
Bigger ones or smaller ones?
No, I'm thinking that's a good, I don't know.
Yeah.
You will get a lot of proposals as we open this up.
We may, I do think one thing that will limit the proposals is specifying that we're looking for a one-timer startup costs. I think that will kind of trim down the proposals. Without that, if we opened it to like services, for example, I think we would get quite a few, but that particular
Okay.
piece might help limit the
Okay,
number
yeah,
of proposals.
that does make sense, yeah.
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 I think that kind of limits it. And I mean, what if we got, and I don't know if there's any out there, but somebody said, well, if you can take care of this plot of land, I'll build these homes that'll be affordable or they'll be fit that mold.
Yeah, everything's open there. So it
Yeah.
may be someone that says, we'll sign a contract that says for the next 15 years, we will be at 2/3 the market value of the average, or 2/3 of the average market value or something like that.
Yeah.
Some,
We may see some people be creative, which would be great.
the other offer that we've heard, it's been a couple of months though, is from Larry Wood, who
Yeah.
would have the capacity and the skills to
Mhm.
build himself, units. He's actually offered to do that, so this might entice him to make a proposal.
Right, right.
Okay.
Okay. So
All
I'll
right.
make.
I want to,
I just was to say, I'll make those changes in the minimum qualifications and we might adjust some of the timelines a little bit, but with those changes, then I'm okay to put it on a Tuesday agenda notice to post.
Sounds good to me, although I have to admit, I fell a little behind for excuses anyhow. I'm glad my two colleagues looked at it and
well,
that was a good catch.
And this doesn't limit us to the one proposal, right?
No,
Yeah, if we had 2 or 3 come in that were just made total sense, we could do that.
it does remind me just a little bit of the way we handled document recording fees the first couple of years that we came, and that was when COG coordinated the plan and had the committee and they presented recommendations. We had so much money and we divvied up the money according to what the proposals were. Of course, that ended up
That was before my
going
time.
off the track, so to
Yeah.
speak. That's what led to the aberration at the old love overwhelming.
Oh, that was before my
The
time.
process that brought that to us, so we've learned an awful lot.
I don't want to burden you with a lot of stuff, but I hope you get a good amount of work from this.
no, I actually really enjoy this process and I hope we get proposals, a good number of proposals. It's always interesting to look through and sort through those.
I'd be really happy with 12, and with 112, I'd be a little bit weird.
I would agree with that.
Okay, so we'll hear back from you next Tuesday then, or do you want to do another workshop, or are you ready for a Tuesday meeting?
I don't think we need another workshop unless there's other feedback from the board. I'll do those couple changes and then we'll plug it in agenda quick for a notice.
So just calendar wise, I'll be here next Tuesday, but I'll be gone the following Tuesday. I'll be still in DC.
Okay.
You won't be here next Tuesday?
I'll be here next Tuesday,
Yeah.
yeah. So if you can do it by Tuesday, that'd be great. I mean, you can do it either in any week, but
Okay.
I'd like to be here.
And just to check, we put no constraints on location here, right? It could be in Woodland, it could be in Castle Rock, it could
We
be
just say within Cowlitz County.
perfect.
Growler's Gulch,
Be pardon?
Growler's Gulch.
Growler's Gulch.
The mayor comes regularly to talk to you and us.
Yeah.
Thanks for your work on that, Gina.
Yep, no problem.
All right.
Okay, so
Cool.
anything
So
else? on the
actually,
RFP?
before we move on, I just want to provide an opportunity for folks that have listened in
Oh, sure.
to have any kind of an input. I don't see any hands raised, although there were a couple of chat items. And we do have somebody in the audience coming up to the microphone. Welcome,
I just had a quick question. You
but you
said,
have to pull
Oh.
that stand a little bit. There you go.
you said, homeless youth is what you guys are looking for. Does that count like families with children and just building homes for families with children? Or is it just strictly you're looking for homeless youth relief?
Some of the conversation recently has been around homeless youth in particular, but the RFP doesn't constrain it so much to that. So certainly entertain proposals for
Okay, thank you.
families with youth.
Good question, because we did have an awful lot of discussion. Was it 2 weeks ago or just 1 week ago? I can't remember. When we had the big workshop about the
Yeah.
community houses proposal,
Right. Mhm.
and that led to the RFP being developed.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
any other questions or comments? All right, so Gina will finish up with the language according to our suggestions, and it'll be before us on a regular Tuesday meeting sometime in our near future.
Yes.
All right.
When you're here. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't have to be when I'm here, no.
Okay. Thought you were asking for that. Okay. I had just a couple miscellaneous items. One is, a couple weeks ago, we were reviewing our upcoming contracts. One is a contract we have with Emergency Support Shelter for their shelter operations. Through that discussion, there was some conversation about, just curious about kind of where they're at financially. And I think the board had asked me to kind of connect with them and get some of their thoughts on, not their thoughts, but get where they're at, get an idea for that. So I had a nice conversation with them. They were kind of sharing with me their budget for the last few years and what that has looked like. It sounds like they have been operating at what they called a budget deficit for a couple of years. Some of their consistent funding has been decreased over the last few years. So they've been filling in those gaps by applying for one-time private foundation funds and things like that. And so they've been pretty lucky in being successful with those grant applications and filling in those gaps. This current fiscal year, they're looking at a deficit of about $141,000 to their budget, and they're continuing to apply for different grants and things to try to fill that gap. So I just wanted to bring that information back to the board because we had kind of touched on it.
The 141 is a shortfall.
Is a shortfall.
Okay,
That's their
and
projected
they were
shortfall.
pretty well hurt because they typically would do a fundraiser breakfast in Phil Hall and
Right.
I don't think they've had one recently, have they?
The last one I got was one of those phantom balls. So
Oh.
you send your money, but nothing happens.
Oh, right, right.
So regular fundraising, and those,
Yeah,
those are cute the first time, but repeatedly, it kind of loses its specialty. So
yeah.
So on the list you presented us, we were looking at half that, right? Half of the 141?
Our contract with them is 100,000,
100, okay.
right? So that's what they anticipate as their deficit. They do have reserve funding. And so that's if they're not successful with filling in that gap with grants, then they will dip into their reserves to cover that.
And we could pull this out of the doc recording fees.
Mhm.
Are you interested in increasing it?
I am.
I've had a little bit of experience and I think they do a pretty good service for during some tough times. So I wouldn't be opposed to that either.
I think it's important, though, that they continue to go back to the public. What about if we propose a challenge grant that we will match what they raise up to a certain amount, just to get them back in, because their leadership has changed and there's been turnover. And so the enthusiasm for going back to the public may not be there because the history isn't there. An idea anyway.
Hello, Bill Gates. Can you grant us about $8 million? It'll be matched.
No.
It would be their biggest fundraiser year ever.
And one of the reasons I say that is that we have other folks providing homeless services who have a local donor base. And they're having to go through the same kind of struggles. So
It's an
I don't
interest,
know if they've actually done as much with the private sector and
it's an interesting question. The thing that clues me in here positively is emergency support shelter. And the other one, there's no other emergency support shelter that I know of. There is the problem that I feel for people getting out of prison. And I don't know what their financial status is, but typically it's not too good. And so they go into houses. I've toured some of them, and they're like 13 people in a 4-bedroom house. That's because nobody would want to rent to them. I don't know how we deal with that, but in any event, how would the match operate here?
well, we kind of do reimbursements all the time. So it'd be kind of like a reimbursement. They present what they've raised and then we would match that during a period of time that they have to do the fundraising. So we've done consistently, we've done, what did you say? It was 140,000 a year, or is it less?
100.
$100,000. I wouldn't, I think that's appropriate to continue that. That's our basis of support. But a challenge grant to get them back out, I think, if it's another 100,000, they raise another 100,000, they get it, or whatever the proportion is they can come up with within, by the end of next year or something like that. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, if that idea appeals to you.
I think I can be swayed.
Yeah.
I would rather,
If we call it COVID relief, we could use ARPA money.
well, in terms of the matching, I like when the citizens in town speak with their contributions.
So,
And so I wouldn't want it to be from a company. I like individual contributions.
the one provider that probably had the least amount of community fundraising involvement when they got well over $1 million of county dollars was Love Overwhelming. And I think, community values get translated by the donors. And if you don't
How
have
long
donors in the
ago?
community, you get organizations that
Yeah.
basically disregard our values. So then that leads us into the problem.
Yeah.
It took us how long to finally defund Love Overwhelming, but
Yeah.
they're good at grant writing, and that's a whole different skill set. That grant writers tend to reflect the values of Olympia rather than Cowlitz County.
So do we have,
I could be persuaded to that too. I do give a little bit of higher priority to this emergency shelter because it's something that happens like it could happen in the middle of the night. Something happens and all of a sudden, what do I do? It's not like, okay, I'm getting out of jail. I need to find a home. You don't have lead time. It just, something explodes and then all of a sudden there needs to be help. And I think they do a very good job of that. At least my experience with them has been, they've done a very good job. So if we can do a little more, whether it's through matching or something, I'd be on board with that.
yeah, and I think we have a lot of stress in the community, and that generally leads to domestic violence issues. And who gets chewed up in between there? The kids.
Well, I've seen it help way back in the day, seen it helping an employee in a tough situation. So.
Yeah.
Um,
So do you want to do the match or just outright fund to 141? Or call it 150. I don't like
Yeah,
small numbers.
I kind of like you, I kind of like to see the public be part of that.
Let's do
too.
that then.
Yeah.
So what's the amount? to offer?
You suggested 100, let's do 50, and if that turns out to be significantly successful. So it's
So
100,
additional to the,
yeah,
keep our 100,000 that we always have,
you're right.
but then offer another 50,000 if they're willing to match
And then matching
with private donations, not other
with,
grants.
with individual.
Yeah.
Individual donations, and you want to match equal amounts? 50-50, if we give you give $1, we give $1.
Sure.
Okay, so up to 50,000 in matching funds.
So that would raise them if they found a match for all that, that'd raise them another 100,
Right.
which would really cut into that shortfall for them.
Or individual donations, not from like businesses.
Right.
Okay.
Well, businesses would be okay, local businesses and donors.
Except local.
I don't want
business-
the Gates Foundation to do it all.
Right, but how do you control that? And many businesses are owned or owner occupied. I don't know what the right term is.
Yeah, around this,
Okay,
this town.
if we're comfortable with individual donors, donations from individuals.
Okay.
Okay.
Help them out.
I will chat with them a little bit more and kind of see, I imagine they might want to do a campaign
Sure.
to get the word out to say, hey.
And this is by the end of year or the end of, say, August 30th?
Oh,
Deadlines are
I
important.
go
for
the
them.
calendar year. I think these are a
For
year
this year.
contracts, right?
What was that?
These are 12-month contracts.
Mhm.
So it'd just be by the end of the contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is our Valentine's gift to the emergency support shelter. Mhm.
If you actually gave them, would be more off to give sooner than if you just left it for the whole year. Does that make sense? Like, if I knew that they had a time limit to give, I would be like, okay. But if I had till the end of the year, I'll be like, I'll do it next week, I'll do it, you know.
That's interesting. Part of the reason I said the whole year is because I don't know how their fundraising is. Do they have enough? How much? It takes a lot of effort to talk individuals into funding. And I don't know if they have the staff, but
Well, why don't you're going to have a conversation with them. They might get excited and describe what
Mhm.
kind of a campaign they would want. Ask them what kind of a time limit makes sense for them. They may have another idea in mind.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're better at fundraising than you and I are. It's always a chore. when we
I don't know that. That's a VP, a
Yeah,
senior
banker,
VP of
banker.
finance there.
I wasn't VP of fundraising.
Okay. So
That's my
you'll,
campaign.
so you'll come back to us with some information that,
Yep, I'll connect with them again and kind of get an idea for what their year looks like for that type of stuff and timeline and all of
again, I
that.
want to give an opportunity to anybody listening in, if they want to make another comment, that's fine. Any strong reservations about heading in that direction? Don't see any hands going up, so.
Just to comment on doc recording fees, little birdie told me that the legislature is considering increasing it by 100 again.
I heard that as well.
You
Oh, my
did?
goodness.
I didn't hear that yet.
No, I haven't heard that either.
You have not heard
That's a
that?
proposal, but the other proposal that's also being considered is a huge bond issue for, what is it, $4 billion to build housing statewide. That
Can
would
we call
require a
that-
vote of the people because it's a bond issue.
Good, okay.
So it's like, well, is it easier to raise document recording fees or go get a bond issue passed? I don't know. It may
Could
be
be.
easier to sneak attacks through. They've been able to do that in the last couple of years pretty easily.
Knowing Gina's skills, and I don't mean this as an insult at all, I mean just the opposite. Maybe she can parlay that into a new courthouse and to satisfy some.
We got a whole room full of homeless judges and and police officers, and prosecutors.
Oh, boy.
No, dude, you've been on a job only a couple of months and look at that.
I hadn't heard that about, I'll have to pay a little bit more attention. I know there is a bill that is looking at consolidating the document recording fee RCWs. There's currently 4 of them.
Yeah.
So they're looking at combining them all to one.
Has slightly different
Mhm.
uses.
Yep. So they're trying to simplify that a little bit without changing, any of the funding.
Should we make a side bet and how simplified they'll get?
I know, right?
Yeah.
I'm horrified at the potential increase again.
Yeah.
But I'm a little bit up on the proposal, how you're doing it, because we're opening it up. We may come up with a different solution, one that might work.
Yeah, I'm holding hopes that we see some good stuff out of this. We've tried to open it up a little bit and
Yeah. Sounds good.
But not a 4 billion bond, please.
You're looking at a list, so you must have something else for us.
I had one more just follow-up item. We had also discussed recently a rent assistance program, and I promised to come back and kind of share some information on where we are with that. Our current program, the original contract was for about $9.4 million for rent and utility assistance. Through, let's see, about mid-January, we have utilized about 7.5 million of that funding for rent and utility assistance. It has served 1,089 households with assistance. That's unduplicated households. So the average assistance per household is about 6,900.
Do we have it's 6,900. That's since the inception of the program.
Right.
Do we have what counts to someone out there trying to find an apartment or someplace to live is how much assistance would they picture? Like if it's a $1,200 a month apartment, are they thinking they got to come up with 800 a month and we supply the balance? I'm trying, what's the monthly breakdown for that?
So if I look at, let's see, so that's rent and utility assistance combined, just kind of the total numbers. I can look at just the rent assistance itself. Let's see.
It's the major proportion, isn't it?
I'm sorry.
Rental assistance is a major portion.
It's most of the assistance is towards rent assistance. I will say the utility assistance, a lot of rent includes utilities and that's not separated out. And so there
it's
are,
difficult to figure out.
right. So there's some,
Call it a bias.
yeah. So it's not really a true idea, but
The landlords would say it probably all goes to utilities.
yeah. If I look at just the rent assistance, we've viewed about 7.4 million has gone just to rent. It's supported 8,599 months of assistance. So the average assistance per month has been about $863.
Wow. You anticipated my question, apparently. Or you're really good at arithmetic.
No, I'm not. I try not to do it in public. It's become a rule up here. Don't do math on the spot.
So they're not accepting any more applications. They're just
the-
processing the current ones that
Correct.
are still back in arrears.
Correct.
for
So when
the
we
times.
look at what is left in that program, there's a little under $1 million left that they're utilizing for those who are currently on the wait list. There's a couple hundred people on the wait list. So they're working through that. They anticipate if the folks who end up all being eligible, they anticipate utilizing the funds about mid-February.
Done with the funded
Mhm.
mid-February?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that? I was drifting.
I say they're working through they closed the wait list, so no new people can apply. And they're just working through that list. And they would anticipate if the majority of those individuals are eligible, they anticipate spending the funds out about mid-February, mid to end February.
Well, that makes my desire to cancel it kind of moot.
It's gonna be done in 2 weeks.
Let's schedule the cancellation for the end of this month then. You know, I mean,
Well, I'm not sure I have the support for that, I doubt you want to cancel any of it, and I wasn't sure whether. my
Well,
colleague-
I think, I don't want to put words in Dennis' mouth, but I think at the end of February, the program's going to be funded. There's no money left and we're just canceling the program. Yeah.
I guess we
Because
both,
we're the
we-
first of
we both
February.
get what we want then?
Yeah, well,
yeah.
no, we're at the 1st of February, and if what they're saying is accurate, in 2 weeks, the funds are going to be used.
Anyway,
Let me just reiterate, what I see here at $863 a month is that there's very little incentive for a landlord to come
Yeah.
down. And when you've got some numbers at some point.
The landlords, so I looked at the landlords and utility companies that have received assistance. So it's been, there's 358 landlords and utility companies that have received this assistance. Of course, the utility companies are a small a handful of that. I have kind of a breakdown of the amounts. So
By a breakdown by how many received $1, how many received $2?
mhm.
Okay.
Yep, so let's see, I'll start from going lowest to highest. So there's been 200 landlords or utility companies that received between $1 and $10,000. 134 landlords or utility companies that received between 10,000 and 50,000 in assistance. And then 11 who received between 50 and 100,000. And the last category, there was 13 that have received between 100,000 and 375,000. And that's the top. of all.
375 is the largest amount
Mhm.
by the PUD, right?
Hmm. No.
I'll bet they have a pretty good share of that through the rents, you know, like you mentioned.
Right, yeah, yeah. We just don't have a way of pulling that, but
All right.
Can we make anything out of those numbers?
I think you hit the nail on the head. There is no incentive to lower rents
Yeah.
if the money's coming in, so.
I agree with Commissioner Morton. I think it's probably moot at this point, but they bring this program again, that's gonna be a tough one for me. If they bring this program again, that will be a tough one for me.
Yep. Okay, so we'll monitor it, and find out.
Okay.
I did see an email today from legal about our Commissioner Dahl's suggestion to make some addition, and he said basically no.
Well,
that-
yeah, and
that it
I,
needs to be addressed some other way.
yeah, and I didn't CC everybody because figuring out all protocol, but I did respond back to Doug with my thoughts on what I thought was medical discrimination, and he and I agree that probably the Title VI isn't the place to do that, but he was going to look at it for me and give me some suggestions on maybe the best place to work on that.
So since there was a certain element of urgency from staff about getting this statement put in, and we don't have any further changes, are we okay,
I'm okay with
saying
it.
thumbs
Yeah.
up and we'll sign it here and
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah.
bring it back to another hearing?
Yeah,
Okay,
So that'll be on Tuesday.
that'll be like a consent agenda thing, but we can send it before then if you want.
That'd be pardon?
We could sign it before then and just put it on a consent
Yeah.
agenda.
yeah.
Just so they can get it sent in. All right, so Kelly, can you resurrect that for us? Okay. Well, any other questions or comments about that issue before we move on?
Not to reiterate him, but I kind of thought his take on the Jake break thing was kind of interesting too.
That was interesting. I think the end of, my understanding from legal counsel is that we continue as we decided,
Mhm.
as the board decided. Some guys didn't go along with it, but.
Yeah,
That's okay. That's
And my hat's off to you. I think that was a very hard one to decide.
So are we ready to tackle dogs barking in Lexington?
No. Wait,
That's in the third district.
this district,
Yeah.
but we
I
do
need a
have,
smaller district.
we do have the Amber Leaders Little Header.
Oh, sure. If you've had a chance to look at it and
I
have more
looked at it,
questions, or-
there are a couple grammatical things I would change, but then requiring double bed cells, I would change that to multiple bed cells, because
Sure.
I don't know that we.
They only have one sixer though. The other ones are doubles, aren't they?
I thought they had multiple 6 cells. Marin, are you on?
Thank you. Thank you, Gina. Is she on?
I don't
see her.
know. There's a hand on attendees coming up.
Oh, corrections. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead. Cowles County Corrections. You're muted right now. There she is.
Hello.
Hi, Marin.
Hi, I didn't hear what you were talking about. I just heard my name. What can I help you with?
Yes.
So we've been asked to write a letter of support for increased funding for true blood diversion
Mhm.
by the BHO. And I made reference to the fact that people with severe mental health issues are occupying multiple bed cells. The letter I used just referenced double bed cells. And I know we have a single 6-bed cell, right? Are there?
Yes, we have
triple cells?
6 single bed cells,
Oh,
and the
okay.
rest of the cells are 2 to 6. Most are in the 4 to 6 range.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Arn was just suggesting changing that to multiple bed cells.
Yeah, that would be more accurate. Yes.
Okay.
Who
great.
was the letter of support to CAHS or who's?
It
Is that
was,
who's?
it was to the folks in charge of
It's to Amber Leaders, a senior policy advisor of the behavioral health.
it's not a
Aging
letter to the
disability.
legislature, it's to the governor's staff that's running
Yeah.
the programs.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how many of our inmates get helped with that true blood diversion. But
They have a.
CIHS is the one that generated the request for us, so.
Oh, correct. So, yeah, they have a staff member that is over here fairly frequently meeting with inmates. I think that, the True Blood case and what's happened with Western State and competency and the numbers have made that the True Blood funding, not as effective, I suppose, as they thought it might be when they put the money into it.
Just not enough of that happening. Yeah.
Yeah, at the same time, they awarded the True Blood money to try to solve the problem. The numbers escalated dramatically. And so,
Well, they pointed out that there's no,
If you build
there's
it, they
no
will
funding in the
come.
budget this year for next year. So. that
for
was a
additional
concern.
True Blood, right.
Right.
I will say that's who we call if, if we're having trouble with housing for somebody, we call the True Blood. That is really our only point of contact if we're sending somebody out into the streets with no resources in that way. They're the only ones I know of that have any luck pulling together housing for really our high needs people. So.
Okay, so I'm going with you, Mr. Chairman, because this is right, what you've been involved with,
Right.
and I don't fully, I'm not confident. I appreciate all the unintended consequences, intended one, but
Yeah.
with those grammatical changes and that
Well-
substantive change,
We'll do that.
I'm
Are you
good.
okay with?
Yeah, I tried to dive into more information on it today, and it's a little bit kind of hard to find, but I would agree. Let's
Okay.
go ahead with that.
Okay, we'll get that letter prepared then this week. Any other questions or comments? All right, I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I am flying out Tuesday, meeting with a member of Congress and Forest Service officials Thursday and Friday. Conference starts Saturday, Sunday, Capitol Hill visits on Tuesday, be flying back on Wednesday, so.
And then,
With a report?
yeah, I was going to
And
say, don't
photos.
forget to report because they were asking for it.
Not a problem. Anything else to be brought to our attention?
or I'd like to think back on the numbers that Gina presented.
Hmm.
And this isn't well thought through, obviously, on my part. It's a lot more palatable to me, and I know this is going to sound weird, but it's more palatable to me to see that we have 1 to 10,000, because I think a lot of the landlords who were just like somebody who bought a house or something like that, and were using that to build some equity at some point, and they were substantially impaired by
Yeah.
stuff. So I look at that and I see the 200 and 200 people or groups that went from, they got a award up to 10,000 awards, not quite the right word, but got the payments there. That doesn't bother me as much as the 13 that got up to 375,000. Those are the corporation types, and not that I'm against corporations, but they're the ones that help swing the laws and have the capital to hire their lawyers and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, why would we subsidize them at the expense of the general public who was trying to compete for that apartment? I mean, $863 a month to a start, that's a pretty good start.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I would agree that I was kind of pleased to see the high number on the low dollar volume.
Yeah.
Because I agree, more mom and pops type thing.
They're the ones most vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, questions? All right, thank you very much. We will adjourn this meeting.
Oh, that's it?
That's it. Yep. Yay.